and welcome to another cup of coffee with me, Sandy. Usually I don't have notes. I've done my research with my friends or people that I've met, but this time it's going to be a little bit different because the person that I really want you to meet and enjoy tonight, it's nighttime our time, but in America it is still daytime. So if you don't mind, I'm going to introduce him by reading a little bit about this gentleman who is rather special, is privileged to allow, I am privileged to be allowed to speak with him and introduce Professor WULF H. Now, WULF H is currently an independent consultant of women's health and Professor Emeritus of Gynecology and Reproductive Biology at the Case Western Reserve University in Cleveland, Ohio, in the USA. He's well known worldwide, really, as the Godfather of Menopause. And this special time is even more special because he's just been honored with a Lifetime Achievement Award. And this is what I'm going to read to you. WULF H UTIAN, reproductive endocrinologist, researcher, author, menopause pioneer, started the world's first menopause research center in Groote Schuur Hospital, which is Cape Town, South Africa. He then transferred to the Case Western Reserve University, Cleveland, Ohio, and that I believe was in 1976. His pioneering infertility microsurgery and IVF, he accomplished the world's first surrogate IVF pregnancy. He co-founded International Menopause Society, IMS, in 1978, founded the North American Menopause Society, NAMS, in 1989, and the Council of Affiliated Menopause Societies, CAMS, in 1994, and was instrumental in helping the launch of over 25 national menopause societies worldwide. I mean, the list just goes on, but I think now is the time to invite you to actually meet Professor WULF H. WULF, are you there? WULF, how are you doing? And welcome to a cup of coffee with me. And I believe at the moment you are at long last back in Cleveland, Ohio, after a rather lengthy stay in Cape Town, South Africa, due to the virus. How are you doing?
Doing fine. I mean, 5 months became 10 months in South Africa. But I must be honest, I think we're more nervous about the COVID virus in the States than we were in South Africa.
Really?
Yeah, I think they're doing a better job with all their problems. They're doing a better job there than the lousy job that's being done here.
Oh, well, I have the feeling that very soon you're going to be going back to South Africa anyway. So you're not going to be in Cleveland for that long. You're going to go back for summer to be with a family in South Africa, correct?
Yeah, we will be back late November.
You and I go back to, I think it was 1965 we met in Cape Town when you were but you were a gynecologist.
Now, it had to be about a year or two later because we arrived in Cape Town the end of 65.
Uh-huh.
I mean, it's like 5 lifetimes ago, everything that's happened.
Right. And you were a gynecologist there.
Right.
And then suddenly, or not so suddenly, you decided that the area that you wanted to go into is menopause. How come? How did you get started in menopause?
You know, a lot of things happened, Sandy. The menopause thing was part of what I was doing. I had always been interested in the hormonal side of women's health. And clearly that took me into issues like infertility, women who weren't producing eggs, weren't ovulating. we were amongst the first places in the world to be using fertility drugs. But one of the things that had happened in my career was really everything is happenstance and circumstance and a little bit of luck. Before I left Cape Town, when I was just starting my postgraduate study in Johannesburg, we had what's called a journal club, scientific journal club, and they gave me an article to read and to present to the group that was called Feminine Forever, Estrogen from the Cradle to the Grave. It was written by a guy in the States called Robert Wilson, who a year later came out with a book that he called Feminine Forever. Well, I had to present this article, and I read it, and there was absolutely no science in it. I mean, it was purely speculative, and so I presented it as such. When I left Johannesburg and went to Cape Town, I always wanted to be an academic. I really was interested not only in the practical and clinical side of medicine, I was interested in the teaching and the research. So I was looking around, casting around for a subject, and it struck me that maybe I should investigate this thing, because at the time, the word menopause, when I got to Cape Town, the standard worldwide textbook was by a British guy by the name of Jeff Coate. And that was like the Bible of gynecology. And in it, there was just one line on menopause. It said, menopause is physiological amenorrhea, meaning that it's a normal loss of periods and there's nothing else to be said. So I started going into the literature, and I started finding that there actually was evidence that women with an earlier menopause had a higher rate of bone fractures, of hip fractures. And there was one person who'd actually written an article suggesting that women with an earlier menopause had a higher rate of heart disease. So I thought, well, this is great. Here's a virgin territory. Nobody's done anything about this, and whatever I do will be new research. So I went to see the head of the department in Cape Town, and I said, you know, I really want to research this, but the only way I can do it is if I can start a special research clinic at the University of Cape Town, Groote Schuur Hospital. It was exactly around the time that Chris Barnard did the first heart transplant.
I remember him well.
Right. So Chris, our department had nothing to do with the heart transplant, but the one thing that happened was that suddenly our hospital became the most famous hospital in the world. And everybody was wanting to give us research money, and suddenly it was like raining manna from heaven. So they allowed me to start this clinic, and I first called it, because I didn't know what to call it, I called it started calling it the menopause clinic, and nobody came, because no self-respecting woman in 1966, 67 in Cape Town would tell anyone that she was going to a clinic called the menopause clinic.
Absolutely not. I was living there at the time, I can tell you. No.
No, the word was not spoken. So I decided I must call it something else. So I called it the Femininity Clinic. And I was inundated with all sorts of women. I mean, everybody wanted to come to this clinic, and none of them were for the right reasons. It wasn't kind of for my research. So chatting with one of the senior nurses at the hospital, she said, why don't you just call it the Mature Women's Clinic? And so to this day, it's still called the Mature Women's Clinic. And that became the world's first research center into menopause. And that's where I got my studies. I started publishing. I got my PhD. And I started traveling the world, because suddenly I was the only person who speak. In fact, in about 1970, I came to Britain I went to the States. First meeting I went to was in the States. So I went to, and this was the meeting of the Federation of International Gynecology and Obstetrics. It was about 15 or 20,000 people. And I had 2 papers accepted on my menopause research. So I was very pleased. I went to the room where I was presenting my papers, and remember, about 20,000 people there. there are about 20 people in the room for my 2 papers. And the one guy sitting next to me says, "What's there to say about menopause?" So I said, "Well, you know, I presume that you've come to hear." He says, no, I'm one of the speakers. The only reason any of the rest of us are here is we're all the speakers."
So you had no audience?
I had no audience. And the same basically happened in 1971. I went to the British Congress of Obstetrics and Gynecology, and the same story. I mean, who cares? There's nothing to say about menopause. That was the story. But fortunately, on the way back, somebody had suggested that I meet a chap in Geneva, Switzerland, who was he was the director of the International Health Foundation. A guy by the name of Peter van Keep, a absolutely wonderful Dutchman with a huge sense of humor, a bon vivant. And I contacted him and said, I'm coming through. And he had finished a PhD on the socio-cultural impact of menopause on women in Europe. And he checked, they'd done research in 5 European countries with a questionnaire of how did the menopause affect their lives. And I had done the complete opposite. My PhD was the clinical and metabolic effects of ovariectomy and the role of replacement estrogens. What that means.
Please explain that.
Yeah, I had looked at the basic science and as best as I could get into the mechanisms by which hormones may impact a woman's life, plus and minus. So later, in fact, he shared his the letter I'd sent him asking me if we could meet, and he'd written across it and given it to his secretary and said, "Who is this WULF H UTIAN? Does he think I'm a travel agent?" We met. He actually had a day off. He picked me up at the airport in Geneva, and you know how sometimes you have a meeting of the minds with someone. Well, Peter and I clicked from the minute we met. I mean, literally, we fell in love with each other from the scientific, professional.
Your heads were in the same place.
We were absolutely in the same place. So Peter says, "Look, I've got the day off. I'm going to show you Geneva." His idea of showing me Geneva was to go to every pub that he knew in Geneva, and at every one we had a drink. And the more that we were drinking, the more excited we were getting about, hey, there's a whole world out there and we need to do something. So we decided to form a menopause club and to invite anybody who might have an interest and had published, anthropologists or basic scientists or clinicians. And so we ran a series of workshops for the next few years in Geneva. And we published these as scientific books. And they are the first scientific books published on the subject of menopause. Well, by 1975-76, we had also created a newsletter. So we had a club and a newsletter for the club. By 1976, we decided there was enough interest developing that we could have a World Menopause Scientific Congress, which we held at La Grande Motte in southern France in 1976. And at that meeting, we had 170 people, and we decided to turn our club into something we call the International Menopause Society. Today, it's got as many countries members as we had individuals members in 1976. Thousands of people. We started a medical journal, and then that was the year that we moved from South Africa to the States. We emigrated.
That's when you came via London, and that's when I actually linked up with you on your way to the USA.
Yeah, we actually slept on your living room floor, the Utian family in camp.
Yes, you did. I wasn't going to say that my home wasn't big enough, but yes, the Utians did sleep on my floor. After being my guests at the Bing Crosby and Rosemary Clooney concert at the Palladium Theatre in London.
Yeah, I always remember, because it was the most amazing concert. And Bing Crosby had his family there. And I always remember the review, and I can't remember if it was the London Times or something the next day. which said it was incredible that such a talented man could have such untalented children.
Well, I'm not going to comment on that. I've written a book, but I'm not going to comment on anything except you were my guest at that concert because they were my
It was a
clients.
wonder. It was incredible. Yeah,
It was a great concert.
Yeah.
They were my client, my PR clients, but that's another story. But
anyway, we were fleeing apartheid South Africa. I'd fallen out with the government, and I'd been invited on a sabbatical to Cleveland, and you know, here 40-something years later, I'm still in Cleveland, and it's been a long sabbatical.
And you still love it there, but
yeah. Then I started. I started helping other countries develop menopause societies. Around 25 countries, I helped them establish societies. And then I started the North American Menopause Society, which is a huge organization across the Mexico, United States, and Canada.
That's the NAMS.
NAMS.
Yeah, that was in 1989. I've just looked at Life Achievement Award, which I think is quite amazing. I think it's such an honor, and I'm showing it to everybody because I'm just so proud of what you have achieved from a young man in Cape Town, South Africa, and in those days to now be honored with this Lifetime Achievement Award. I think it's quite wonderful.
Thanks. Yeah, it just came out last week, and you know, the best part about it is one gets lots of awards, but it's very gratifying to be recognized by your peers. Sure. You know, it's and so yeah, obviously I'm quite bucked about it.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. I've got a couple of questions for you. I know that you did the first surrogate IVF pregnancy. The story of it. What has happened since then?
Well, it's very interesting because if things had happened differently, I could have had the first in vitro, successful in vitro program in the world in Cleveland in 1976, but they wouldn't allow me to do it.
Why?
They said it was a gimmick. They said and so I changed hospitals. Same university, but I changed hospital, but the delay. So we landed up being the third successful program in the United States. And out of the blue, I got a telephone call from a cardiologist in New Jersey who said that his wife had ruptured her uterus in a pregnancy. She'd had a hysterectomy, that she had a friend who was willing to carry a pregnancy if I was prepared to take her eggs and his sperm, fertilize them in our lab, and transfer them to her friend's uterus. In other words, surrogacy had been done in animals for a long time, so the track record in animals had been done for a long time. So he did admit to me that I was the fourth. There were 4 programs in the United States, successful programs, and I was the last person he was calling because he was calling alphabetically, and I was U in the alphabet. And he'd been turned down by the other 3 programs that, no, they thought it was immoral, illegal, or something. So I said to him, look, let me take it by the university and the hospital boards and see what they say. Well, they put me through a real rigmarole, but eventually agreed. And in fact, we were followed by the scientific TV program on PBS, Nova. And so there was actually a whole program eventually on whatever happened on Nova. And then we went on all the TV shows once because it worked. The interesting thing is that so we took his sperm, his wife's egg, fertilized in the test tube, quote unquote, and then we transferred it to a third party, to a friend. She carried the pregnancy and she delivered the baby in the state of Michigan. We're in the state of Ohio. We didn't deliver the baby. We just created the pregnancy. The state of Michigan then did something highly unusual. For the first time in world history, they said that the woman who carried the pregnancy wasn't the mother, that the woman whose genes, whose eggs had been used, she was the mother. So this was very gratifying to the couple who lived in New Jersey. And so their baby, the birth certificate has no name of a surrogate. It has only the name of the husband and wife.
The parents, the actual parents.
Yeah, so we published in the New England Journal of Medicine. It went viral all over the world. We were on all the television shows. I mean, it was hectic. And like so many things, you know, you let something loose and you publish it and you give the details, on which we did. We published how we did it and every step we took. And so some very legitimate places began doing it, and it's a worldwide phenomenon today. And then, of course, some other highly illegitimate kind of people with lower ethics or lower moral standards started doing things like offering, they would recruit poor women in India or Pakistan. Money. It became about money. And they started creating these organizations, a lot of them that were established by kind of sleazy lawyers and with sleazy doctors in collusion. And so in many ways, it began to get a bad name. In the States, the Society for Reproductive Medicine, American Society for Reproductive Medicine, has set in a whole series of accepted standards of practice. And fortunately, most people follow those standards of practice, but there's no law on it, so things do happen. The difference, though, is, of course, that women who previously, or couples who previously could not have had a pregnancy, and not have had, and not ever been able to have a family, sure, unless they adopted, were now able to have a baby that was genetically their baby.
Sure, sure.
And so it was, look, I think it was a terrific thing. I'm pleased we did it. I'm sorry that some people behave badly about what they've done, but in all, it's helped a lot of people.
Where can women get the best information about things like this, for not for money purposes? Just
well, yeah, the best. We all know that Dr. Google is the worst place to go. We all know that there are reputable organizations and reputable websites, and then there's the rest. So my advice usually is to do something like to go either to for fertility reasons, infertility treatments, go to something like the website of the American Society for Reproductive Medicine, ASRM. I think their website might be asrm.org, but I'm not sure.
Okay, and your website, because you've written many books.
Yes, absolutely. And if they want information on menopause, hormones, what's the right thing to do, what's the wrong thing to do, etc.
Yeah.
Then the North American Menopause Society has it's really absolutely the most reliable site for women to go to. They can go to menopause.org, menopause.org.
Right.
They can go into the consumer part of the website, and there is tons of information they can pull up, including we do a certifying exam, a certified NAMS menopause practitioner. And they are people who've studied it, they've done an examination, they've passed the exam. And we have them, and they're listed for many countries as well, because a lot of people from other countries have done them in order to get listed on the website. So that's a good place to go. I have my own website, but that really, it's just access to my books.
Give me an idea of just a couple of the books that you've written, because I know that you've written many, and I know that, again, the honors include Good Housekeeping is one of America's best physicians in women's health, and Ladies' Home Journal, and top 10 researchers in women's health. So, you know, you've done the entire gambit. So
yeah,
give me an idea of your books, if any of the women.
Here's one. I don't know if you can see it.
Yes, absolutely. I can see Change Menopause.
Change Your Menopause.
But does not fit all. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is a book that is now in its, I think it's the third edition I've done now.
Okay.
It's the second edition of that book. That so what, that is a book written, I've written textbooks for practitioners, many,
Yes.
but this is a book written for women. Actually, it's written for women and men, because I do a section on it on men and menopause as well.
That was a question I was going to come to in a minute.
And it brings up, the issues of sexuality and interrelationships and so forth. But this book is based totally on scientific facts. So although it's written in easy to read language for all women, I don't put a single thing in it that I cannot prove with good scientific evidence. And if there isn't evidence, I say that. I say, we don't know. Here's something we just don't know. So that's in that respect, that's good evidence. It's a good place to go. I'm actually just finished, and next week, this is a book I did 10 years ago.
Utian strategy. What's that about?
Yeah. And it says, is this my problem or is this your problem? So here was something that I learned, in the school of hard knocks, so that it learned in life and then polished in terms of running. I had when I was chairman of OBGYN and reproductive biology at the university at Case Western Reserve, and head of the practice at University Hospitals of Cleveland, and then going to the Cleveland Clinic. I had literally hundreds of people that I was responsible for, and responsible for the standards of healthcare that was being provided at these large institutions. So I learned the lessons of that, what I call the Utian strategy. It's a sort of situation where somebody comes running into the office and says, we've got a problem. And the moment they say, we've got a problem, it means he's got a problem and he wants his problem to be my problem.
He wants to share it.
So usually what I say to him, is this your problem or is it my problem? And so let's get down to the basics. What is the problem? And then once we've defined what the problem is, I can say, yes, that is a problem in the department. It's my problem. I'll take it over. That's adopting and taking over responsibility for the problem. But that's only 1 in 100. 99 times in 100, it's not my problem. This is your problem. And I'm sure you don't want me to fix your problem. And so why don't you go away and sort it out and let me know what happens? And most times it works. And so I apply the problem to family and to politics, and in the new edition, even to COVID, the issue about dealing with the problem of COVID, not the science and everything. It's just a short chapter on dealing with COVID.
So it's really up to date.
Yeah, because COVID is a problem that is everybody's problem.
Sure, it's a worldwide problem.
But they're parts of it. How the government deals with it and how they look after our public health is their problem. And in the States, for example, the government here is trying to make their problem our problem. Whereas the way you behave, do you wear a mask, wash your hands, socially distance, and all that stuff, that's our problem.
Absolutely.
And
that's our responsibility.
Right. And if somebody comes up, stands behind me in a supermarket and doesn't wear a mask and is breathing over my shoulder, they try to make their problem my problem. I would turn around and say, excuse me, there's markings on the floor. There's social distancing. Do you mind stepping back? Don't make your problem my problem. I want to keep you safe. You keep me safe.
Absolutely, especially at our age group. You touched on a subject that I really wanted to ask you about. Do men suffer any kind of menopause in any shape or form in relation to a woman's menopause?
Okay, it's a great question, because a woman's menopause, her reaction to menopause is complex. Part of her reaction is based on what's happening in her body. What's happening to her hormonal levels, what's her pre-existing health. So there's a medical component to it. the ovaries stop working, the estrogen essentially disappears, and it may have or may not have a multiple set of impacts on her.
Okay.
But also she's living in a very broad world. So the socio-cultural environment she lives in. You live in the States, it's a youth-oriented environment. So suddenly you get into menopause and a signal comes, hey, I'm getting older. And you may have a negative reaction to that. So that's responding to the socio-cultural. There's the psychological, the inner mind. Some women, it doesn't matter what you throw at them, they deal with it. They just get on and on to the next thing. They somehow are copers. They're able to handle.
That's me, Prof. That's
you,
me.
Sandy. Absolutely, I agree. That's you. There are other women, the slightest thing puts them into a decline. Oh my God, I can't deal with this. You know, I don't know what to do. And it's just, so the psychological makeup of an individual also has an impact. So what, and then there's certainly an environmental impact as well. So what I'm saying is that women have something specific. Their ovaries run out of eggs.
Yeah. They dry up, really.
Correct. They produce less hormone and the body reacts in various ways to that.
Sure.
Men, however, the testis goes on working for years and years. And you hear about guys who've, in fact, a guy I know recently in Cleveland, he's 80 and he got remarried and he's just got a newborn baby. And I look at him and I think he's insane, but you know, that.
But what about Charlie Chaplin?
Yeah, well, so you see, on the men, their testis doesn't dry up like that, but they're in the same world as the women. And they've got the same socio-cultural and environmental things. So it's often the situation where they reach the age of 50 and some of them fall apart. It's you know, the classic joke. It's when the guy, he divorces his wife, he runs after a 16-year-old and he buys a red Ferrari or whatever he can afford.
Yeah.
And so are men affected by menopause? Not in the physical sense like women, but in every other way, yes.
It does change them mentally.
No question.
There's no question about
it. They get a sense of aging, they get a sense of mortality. You know, a woman in the office calls him sir, and he freaks because, you know, that means that this woman thinks he's old. These are the things that happen and that have an impact on a guy.
Yeah, you see a lot, and it's worldwide now. You see an older man leaving a loving home and going for a new family or a new young woman. And it's usually a man that has got a lot of money in his pocket and it's his trophy.
It is his trophy. And the tragedy is if you follow most of those,
yeah,
they don't all live happily ever after. Those are not usually success stories.
Yeah. And you know, they think the grass is greener on the other side, but don't throw away the dirty water for the clean, because really
you've got
absolutely stay with what you've got. But you know, the world is not like that. Not all men are like that. But you do see it a lot.
Not. And, you know, there are a lot who will value a long-standing relationship, and usually that turns out for the best anyway.
Well, we live in hope on that. Do you have any other how to stay well for both men and women?
Yeah.
Any ideas?
You know, there's a government agency here called the U.S. Preventive Services Task Force. They come out with a report once a year on what tests people should have, what vaccines they should have, And they look at various drugs and things as to whether they're appropriate or not. But I'm always intrigued by the opening statement in that they had in one of the previous issues. And what they essentially said was, if you could get people to eat healthy, no smoking, moderation in alcohol, safer sex, seatbelts, exercise, and I think I said good nutrition, healthy eating.
Healthy eating.
If you could do that, you close half the hospitals in the world. Just that.
Just that.
And all of that, by the way, is free.
Yeah.
Essentially.
And that's it could be normal living.
Yeah. So the point I'm making is that if people would simply get into healthy living, it's what I always say to women as they go through the menopause. You know, somebody comes into the office and she says to me, oh my God, it's the big M. What do I need to do? And I say, you know, why don't you use this as a marker it's the middle point of your life. You're not old, you're in the middle point of your life. Because given the statistics, a lot of women are going to live to 100 or more. And a woman at age 50 is very likely to live to 100 today. It's the midpoint of your life. So why don't you decide that now is the moment you're going to start doing all the good things. You're going to start looking after yourself. You're going to exercise. You're going to start eating more healthy, get a good standard body weight. Don't smoke. Yeah, have a glass of red wine every day. That's fine. Wear your seatbelts. Just live healthily. Yeah. Just behave normal. Yeah. And you're going to be fine. You don't need any medications, basically.
The interesting thing is that women now in their 60s and 70s are like women that used to be 50s.
Well, no question.
They are now still sexually active.
Oh, yes.
And the only problem that I've found in research that I've been doing is that the women in their 60s and 70s are not taking precautions. They are now the ones that are syphilis, gonorrhea,
yes,
AIDS,
absolutely, yes,
because they think that they can't have children anymore, and now it's free for all. I don't mean a one-night stand here and there or anything like that, but they are not using any sort of contraception, whereas the kids of 20s and 30s and 40s are still doing that. But the women in my age group who are still sexually active, unfortunately, are the ones who are getting what used to be the young person's illness.
That's absolutely true. In fact, the statistics are showing that the senior living homes and developments are amongst the highest incidence of sexually transmitted diseases. But you know, of course, and sexual activity, if you can really continue to try and live well, be lucky. Obviously, luck always plays a part, and do the right things. Sexual activity can go on late. I used to run an annual Women's Health Day, and I used to bring in a great celebrity, and which would attract a lot of women. And I'd fill the ballroom of a big hotel downtown with almost 3,000 women. And they would come down, and I'd have a lot of medical experts speak to them about a whole different range of subjects. I invited one year, I invited a woman who was one of the first major TV anchors in America. She had interviewed everybody from Hitler to John F. Kennedy to you named it. She'd interviewed them. And she arrived, and at this point she was about 85, maybe 86. And she came in with a young guy who looked like her caregiver, who was helping her. And when she came in, she was all small and bent over, and she reminded me of E.T. in the movie. And I thought, oh my God, what have I done? She's my keynote speaker.
It wasn't Dr. Ruth, was it?
No, So I'm trying to remember her name. I will in a moment. So she came up the stairs up to the podium. I had like a soapbox behind the podium so she could step onto it so she could be seen over the podium. And she got up there and she got over this podium bent, and she looked around at everybody. And she said, "You're all wondering about me, aren't you? And you're all wondering who the young man is I came with. He's not my caregiver, he's my lover." And she said, "And you know what the secret is to a long life of sex and good health? It's sex and chocolate."
I love it.
Well, she brought the house down, and from then onward, she was 86. She had everybody in the Dorothy Fulltime, her name was Dorothy Fulltime, Fuldheim. If you Google her, you'll see that she was one of the first famous anchors in America. And Dorothy Fulltime at 86 literally controlled 3,000 women. They were with her. It was incredible.
And that's an amazing story. I love it. Have you got any other ideas, thoughts for women who really suffer with, in America, it's called flashes,
Yes.
or here it's called flushes. Have you got any suggestion of how women who are really struggling with their hot flushes to overcome it? Is there a way besides medication?
Well, it's difficult. I mean, if they're mild or moderate, we suggest they take, like, there's a food supplement, for example. It's derived from a food supplement. It's called S-Equal, E-Q-U-O-L, S-Equal. I'm not advertising. It's marketed in the States as Equel. So what it is, it's a soy-derived molecule, and it's very effective for a lot of women. What it will do, it'll take flushes that they really can't bear, that are having a negative impact on their quality of life, and turn them into flushes that at least are bearable and not bothering them, that they interfering with their day-to-day activities. Exercise, keeping the windows open if you can, layering instead of thick sweaters, all that sort of stuff may help. But once a woman gets to the point where the flashes are really keeping her awake at night, and she's waking fatigued and irritable and feels she's losing her memory.
Mood swings as well.
Mood swings, the whole story. Look, anybody, I know, I mean, just think, I mean, like, don't do it anymore, but think back in the days when you would go out and you'd be out late at night and you'd have a lot to drink, and you'd get to bed in the early hours of the morning, and then you've got to get up at 7 o'clock for work. Well, you feel like you can't cope, you're irritable, you snap at people. I mean, that's...
You may do, I don't. I'm a night bird. I'm still a party girl. You forget about me.
All right. So what happens is that the flashes, if they wake you at night, we call them night sweats.
Yes.
And if you've got a night that's completely interrupted,
yes,
it's going to have a negative impact on you the next day.
Absolutely.
So the
and
idea
also
is
your partner, your husband or partner.
Absolutely. So sleep hygiene is important. Trying to get control of sleep. And so if someone is having symptoms that are really, really severe, it's much better to see a gynecologist or a physician who understands menopause, and to consider taking a hormone. Okay. And after all the noise that's gone on over the years, there is no question that for most women, the advantages of taking an estrogen, and there are lots of quote unquote natural estrogens out there that you can take that are approved by government agencies. But to take it, the advantages far outweigh the disadvantages.
Well, I want to tell you something. Forgive me for interrupting. I had a hysterectomy. I was very young, and I had the estrogen for many, 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 many years. It was my choice, and I never ever knowingly went through the menopause.
Right.
Uh,
Absolutely.
I was so lucky, so blessed, but I've seen a lot of my girlfriends sitting at a luncheon and suddenly the color is rising
Ah,
and it's
yes.
uncomfortable. And I actually feel very sorry for them because I've never ever been through that.
And many of them were terrified. They were frightened off taking hormones by all the stuff that was coming out in the media a few years ago.
Yeah.
But the truth of the matter is, for the majority, it's it's really a blessing. The other is that there will be very soon a whole new family of drugs. They're in the final phase of testing that really get into the mechanism of what causes the hot flush in the body, and they're not hormones. So so far, all well, they don't have names yet. They're all got numbers, but they're family of C captain. I think it's a peptide, but it's something that's been literally designed, knowing the cascade of chemical events that takes place in the body, and then putting something in that breaks that cascade so the flash doesn't develop. And I think that's going to be the next big breakthrough. And they're probably within, I'm not sure, but I would think that the first ones may well be on the market within 6 months or a year.
Well, do you know how that is going to help millions of women
Oh,
all over
yes,
the world? It's going to change their lives.
no question.
Well, my last question to you is, we have lots of viewers, lots of listeners, and I'm sure that there are a lot of women who would like to possibly ask you personally questions. Are you open to that? If they want to make contact with you, is there a website that they can contact you and speak to you?
Yeah, I mean, they could go to my website. It's utianllc.com
Right.
and post a question,
Yeah. Yeah.
or they can send me an email. But I have to be honest that I get hundreds of emails every day.
No, I'm not
So
asking about emails. It's
yeah,
just if they wanted to post a question to you,
yeah,
at some stage you would answer them.
yeah.
Just
If I see a question has come up on the website,
yes.
I'll respond to it on the website.
Okay. So no emails, but
Now the
definitely
emails, yeah,
you
because
would answer.
emails are today's nightmare. They're just pouring.
Yeah. And not with all the traveling that you do anyway, it's impossible. But as long as we know that you do respond to messages on help, if they need help, you will be there to give it, but please no emails.
Right.
Okay. Well, all I want to say to you, it's been fun, it's been interesting, it's been male, female. We've covered all the aspects of everything. And thank you for your time. I know that you have got
I
a
see
full
that the
agenda.
sun has suddenly come out and is hitting me full in the face. I see.
Oh, okay. Well, uh, at that stage we will leave. But before I leave you, I just want to show. I've had one comment from one of our viewers to say, although it's called a cup of coffee with Sandy, you never see her with a cup of coffee. Well, here I am. I've always got a cup of coffee. I don't always drink it while I am talking to friends, guests, but now you can see it is a cup of coffee with Sandy. My guest today was Professor WULF H who it's been a pleasure to speak with you. Travel safely, take care, be safe, and we will watch this space to see how women are going to be helped in the future, maybe within 6 months, if your theory or your knowledge is absolutely correct on the time scale. So
Thanks,
Wolf,
Andy. Been an
take
absolute
care.
pleasure.
God bless. Travel safely. And I know at some stage we will meet again. But in the meantime, thank you. And thank you to everybody watching. And I will see you again for a cup of coffee with another guest of mine. Take care. Bye-bye.